Hey everyone, welcome to episode 117 of Tuesdays with Perry. We'll get Perry on the line in just a minute. So we're going to be talking about what's happening in the Middle East with Iran and Israel. We'll probably start out with that. We're going to talk about a former Coast Guard lieutenant who was leveling threats against Donald Trump. He's been arrested. We're going to talk a little bit about the border. In May, border agents didn't release a single illegal immigrant into the U.S. And in New York City, candidate for mayor and New York City comptroller Brad Lander was arrested by immigration officers in Manhattan court after he tried to protect an illegal immigrant. All right, let's see if we can't get Perry on the line. Perry, are you there? Hello? I hear something. Perry, are you there? Hello? Perry, are you there?
I'm here, Rudy. You went dead. I'm in a stationary spot, so I'm blaming your carrier tonight.
Very good, very good. Let's start in the Middle East. So we have the country of Israel attacking Iran attacking back with ballistic missiles. There's a tit for tat, but apparently Israel has the upper hand now. And Donald Trump just said he is urging an unconditional surrender already by Iran. And he says he knows where the leader of the Iranian government, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is hiding, and said, we're not going to kill you for now. He did something similar with the Taliban. What's your take? And of course, the United States is rushing military assets into the area and promising, or not promising, but it looks like they might aid the Israelis with bunker busting bombs. What do you say about what's happening down there in the Middle East and with Israel?
Well, I'm not happy about any of this. I mentioned to you via text while you were getting ready to go live with the show tonight how please call me because I'm getting sick of listening to Sean Hannity encourage Donald Trump to involve the United States directly in this war. And, one thing everyone that supports this president has known about him since 2015. He is not a wordsmith. He would never succeed at being a diplomat. That's why he brings people in like Marco Rubio, and whether we like him or not, Mike Pompeo, in the prior administration, who can very diplomatically, using an air quote, tell someone like the Ayatollah, hey, look, motherfucker, we could do this the easy way or the hard way. And Donaldus Magnus doesn't have that social guard. He just tells people what he thinks, which people like you and I admire him for. But when you start threatening a leader of another nation with an ultimatum, you either surrender unconditionally like we made the Japanese do, especially the Japanese emperor, which I'm sure many of your listeners are not aware that up until the time of the Japanese surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri, very few, if any, Japanese even saw a picture of the emperor. He was considered a god. And that kind of humiliation devastated what was left of the Japanese culture for decades. Apply that to a 7th century society. It doesn't play well. So whether you're the Ayatollah and you're scared shitless living 3, 4, 500 feet below the surface of a piece of rock, or you just are waiting to be a martyr. For Donald Trump to say to you, either surrender unconditionally, which means come out with your hands up waving a white flag, and we'll decide what we do with you after we take you into custody. That's what that means. It's not a good idea.
Right. Do you think
it's not?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I know you're a big supporter of Israel. So is this going to lead to World War III? Is that what we're looking at? We have China talking about supporting Iran. We have Pakistan talking about rallying other Muslim countries to support Iran. We know that Russia's preoccupied and said it is unlikely we'll be able to help you. Do you think this could lead to World War III? It sounds like you have some trepidation about what's happening.
Well, we're already in World War III. That's the problem. People don't see that. We're involved in a lot of activities around the world right now. And two of them, let's face it, you have said it countless times on your daily show, and I have seconded the thought. You've got the United States Central Intelligence Agency running a war, very poorly, mind you, in Eastern Europe. You have very possibly a war that's going on right now in the Middle East, meaning Gaza, that was possibly perpetuated by the CIA and with the aid and assistance of Mossad. And now you want to spread that war further into, actually, it already has been spread because there have been casualties on both sides. You've already spread that now 1,000 or 1,100 miles away from any border of Israel in what some people could say is part of Eurasia. Not really, but we're talking about Persia here. And when you look at this geographically, you have to say to yourself, oh, by the way, the Chinese have mobilized part of their Navy too.
Yeah.
That hasn't been discussed very much in the news. They're moving them outside the Pacific Rim nations, a battle group. And they're not doing it to come into the Persian Gulf or the Straits of Hormuz and say to the Nimitz, which is on its way, to the skipper of the Nimitz, hey, we're here to help. Where do you want us to position our ships? That's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at all these pieces on the chessboard, I don't like what I see.
Yeah.
I thought the mission was, meaning the Israelis taking out the nuclear capabilities of the Iranians. I thought that was the mission. Well, they've vastly exceeded their goals.
Yeah.
Because they not only have taken out publicly anyway, every single nuclear
facility,
whether it was design, engineering, education, whatever it was, every single one of those facilities, except one, have been completely destroyed. There's nothing left but rubble. And you've wiped out everyone at the top of their nuclear program.
And their military.
It was just,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it was just announced before you came on or had me come on. It was just announced on Fox News. I'm sitting here in my truck listening to it on XM, that they already took out the head of the Iranian Guard that was the replacement commander for the guy they took out last week.
Yep.
They already took him out. He lasted 4 days. So why are we pushing this to the brink of a hot world war?
Yeah.
And I just don't like this. I mean,
well, you know,
I thought,
yeah, you know,
the last thing I wanted to point out about the Israeli mission, as Bibi Netanyahu said, and it's not propaganda, although he said it for propaganda purposes, the Persian people have no gripe with the Jewish people. There are Persian Jews that had to rush out of their homeland after the Shah of Iran was deposed. There were thousands of Jews for generations that lived in what is now Iran. There were synagogues, all kinds of true Jewish culture lived peacefully in that nation, okay, because it was under the control of the Shah. And they had to leave because of the Iranian Revolution.
right.
And so they're saying to these Persians, the Americans, the Israelis, they are saying, our beef is not with you. We want peace with you. We want to engage you peacefully, but first you have to get rid of the people that are controlling you, that are forcing you into a level of servitude. And if you've mentioned it on a prior daily show last week, I think it was, maybe not, maybe it was the special report, I don't know, but you did mention how there has been a color revolution recently. It was the Green Revolution in Iran during the time of Obama. But Obama turned his back on them, and it was quickly put down by the Iranian Guard, Revolutionary Guard.
Yep.
And many of those people were slaughtered. Some of them are still in some gulag somewhere. So, you know, once you've been bitten, you're not so quick to reach for the head of the snake a second time.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think there is any signs of revolution for democracy, demands for democracy in that country right now. My understanding was until yesterday, that was the intent, was to defang them, to destroy the command and control of their armed forces so that the people could rise up and take their country back from the theologists. It hasn't happened. So what are we going to do now? We're now going to take the theologists out?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to do?
Do you
Well, that doesn't make us any better than them.
right? Because what seems to be on the table now, what the Americans seem to be preparing for, is using the bunker buster, which can only be used with the B-2. So it's not something we're going to give Israel. If we're going to use this bunker buster, we're going to have to
Rudy,
go.
I lost you after you said the bunker buster. Did you turn your head?
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Rudy?
Yep. Do you hear me now? How about now?
Rudy?
How about now?
If you turned your head, turn it back.
Yeah. No, I did. I'm not on the phone.
Because
So
I did not hear anything after you said bunker buster.
you hear me now? Hello?
All right.
Yeah. This
I
is.
don't even know if you're.
Yeah.
Did
Hello.
you hear?
Hello.
Did you hear anything I said? I lost you after you said bunker buster.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's something with my phone.
So you said bunker. The America's going to use
Right.
a bunker buster,
Right.
and then I lost you. So
right,
I don't know where you were going.
Right. It can't be given to the Israelis because it needs to be delivered with the B-2, because it's so heavy. It's like 30,000 pounds. So, do you think the U.S. should get involved because they would have to use the bunker buster for, I guess, what's that other site that's 360 meters underground or something?
Right.
Fordham. Do you think the United States should become involved in that fashion? It's going
No,
to,
no,
yeah,
and no,
yeah,
look, I'm very concerned about us getting any more involved. Look, it's one thing to support an ally. I'm all for that. But, and keep in mind, this is something that the press hasn't covered either. The Jordanians and I believe Bahrain, if I'm not mistaken. I know there were two Arab nations. It could have been the UAE. I don't think so. I'm almost positive it wasn't Saudi Arabia. They assisted the Israelis, the Americans, and the Brits last week when Iran was launching. They were aiding and assisting with their own anti-ballistic missile capabilities. So there's no guarantee that there isn't an Israeli, and this has been done before, that knows how to fly a B-52. The B-52 can carry that bunker buster too. Now, are we going to send a B-52 with the Star David on it, flown and commanded by an Israeli, to drop? Because remember, the Israelis now they own the skies
yeah,
over Iran.
yeah.
So if there are any Iranian attack planes left, fighter jets left, they're not leaving their camouflage nets, okay? And they're not going anywhere because I'm sure they don't have a runway to take off from. So there are no fighter craft. There are obviously no anti-aircraft capabilities. So the Israelis can do whatever they want from the skies. Flying a slower aircraft and a much bigger one, like the B-52 that needs 8 engines to fly, is a possibility. And like I said, it wouldn't be the first time American jets, this was done in 1973, it wouldn't be the first time American jets had the star of the USAF removed and the Star of David put on and an Israeli flying it immediately into action. There's no way we're going to get physically involved on an offensive capability.
Right.
It's one thing to be on the defensive support. That's one thing. It's a totally different thing, and it's going to be looked at totally differently, not only by Xi and Putin, but also our allies around the world in the Pacific and in Europe, and for that matter, in South America and in Africa. We got troops all over the world. And that's what I worry about. If we get involved any further than we are, you know, Uncle Joe let in thousands of I don't want to call them mujahideen, but he let in thousands of Islamic Jihad and Hamas and Hezbollah fighters. We know this. You know, prior to the election, I brought up a story that was covered on Fox News. I think it was Griff Jenkins, who was on the border at the time with all the chaos from Uncle Joe. And there was this guy who looked Arabic, but he could have been Hispanic. So Griff Jenkins got him to respond to a question. The question was, "Sir, who are you and where did you come from?" And he turned around and said, "You don't need to know where I come from, but soon enough, you will know who I am."
Yeah.
And he turned and walked away. That guy walked into the United States.
Right. So we could easily be attacked by uh,
on our own shores.
right, by Hezbollah or somebody. So another two things really quickly though. Okay, so do you believe the legitimacy? Because Bibi has said Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. He must have said that 20 times over the past couple decades.
Yep.
And we use this same premise, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and the same thing in Libya. What do you think of legitimacy of Bibi's claims this time around? And do you think Israel would send commandos into that bunker?
All right. First, let's talk about Bibi. Like Trump and any other qualified politician anywhere in the world, bloviating, talking, I don't want to say extemporarily, but certainly exaggerating a statement isn't a lie. And Trump is a master at doing stuff like that. But the reason why we've been hearing they're 2 weeks away since Bush 43 is because no one really knew, or at least we weren't being told, how well the Iranian nuclear program, meaning they already, look, 20 years ago, they already knew how to detonate a bomb. They already knew how to build a bomb. The atomic bomb plans have been, I don't want to say no longer classified, declassified, since after, the Rosenbergs were hung for treason.
Right.
Okay.
So Tulsi
Gabbard. Let me finish that thought.
Yep.
So knowing how to build a bomb is easy. Getting your hands on plutonium, weapons grade plutonium, ain't so easy.
Right.
And so they've been able to refine yellow cake down to uranium 235, and then there's another form of uranium, which is when you start getting into weapons grade, anything over 60% is what they call quality cake. The thing that scared everyone in the Western world is what happens when they get to 90%. Because now you can build not a kiloton bomb, you can build a megaton bomb.
Yeah.
And not only that, and this is the thing that scares me when, the Iranians say, we have a big surprise coming for you tonight. Okay? Everybody has seen, and if you haven't, everyone watching or listening to your show tonight, go out and watch the movie Sum of All Fears.
Yep.
Okay? A suitcase bomb is not going to take out the East Coast, but a suitcase bomb detonated in Washington, D.C., or detonated in New York or any other major metropolitan area will cause such irreparable harm to our country that we may not truly recover from something like that.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a megaton bomb. It doesn't even have to be. I think the first bomb over Hiroshima was 5 kilotons, if I'm not mistaken. It was not a bomb by today's standards.
Right.
But the quality of the material they were supposedly perfecting is that kind of material. So when whether it was Bush or it was Obama or it was Uncle Joe or Donaldus Magnus, every one of them said, look, they're close, but we're not going to let them get it. Right. Well, the only one who really meant that was Donald Trump. And obviously, over the course of the last 2 weeks, when you start seeing heads of state come and go from the White House, especially when there's high-level conversations, it doesn't have to be president to prime minister. It could be vice president to defense minister, or it could be secretary of state to the minister of interior. The reason for those conversations and them being public is because they're talking about what we're dealing with right now. And therefore, what was going on between Bibi and Trump over the past 2 weeks was Trump acquiescing and saying, okay, we see the evidence. It's obvious. Time has run out. You strike now or we deal with the consequences later.
Right. Well, Tulsi Gabbard 6 months ago reported that Iran was not close to getting a nuclear bomb. What do you say about Tulsi's intelligence claims? And given
Rudy, that was 6 months ago.
Yeah, could be different now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, again, this is the problem people like us have. I don't mean with one another. I mean the problem that you and I have with politicians speaking loosely. Okay. They're 2 weeks away. They're 2 weeks away. You know, it's the boy who cried wolf. And at a certain point, people just tune it out. So when Tulsi said, based on the intelligence she had been given, okay, again, now who is it that's giving her the intelligence? The same people who told Colin Powell there were WMDs in Iraq, okay? And now this time it's no. They're not that close. Let me tell you something. I don't give a flying fuck what our spooks say. I'm going to listen to what the Mossad says.
Yeah.
Because the one country that could be destroyed, not devastated, wiped off the face of the earth, if and when the Iranians got their hands on a workable bomb that could be delivered by any number of ways, they can't afford that.
Yeah.
You know, the Israelis don't pick fights with people for the fun of it. They don't. Contrary to what everyone says about us Jews, we are not warrior people, but we have our warrior class. And it goes all the way back to King David. And for Bibi to give the green light to this operation, which, by the way, the Israelis admitted, we've been practicing this for years. They've been flying F-15s, and now a lot of the F-15s have taken a back seat to the new F-35s. They've had F-35s now for a few years. They've been practicing this for years. I would say maybe for more than a decade. And they waited until there was no time to wait anymore.
Right. And also they had complete infiltration. And Bibi even said, if you thought the beeper attack was something to be proud of, he said he's got something else in store. All right, we got to move on because I want to cover another 3 or 4 stories here. This is something you brought up to me just recently. So a former Coast Guard lieutenant, Peter Stinson, has been brought up on charges by the federal government for making more than several threats against shooting Donald Trump. And the thing is, it's a viable threat because Stinson was trained as a sharpshooter while in the Coast Guard and in other military. I guess he was in the Navy too for a while.
That's right.
So he's arrested. They are going after people that are threatening Donald Trump. I wish they could proactively go after Kathy Griffin. I don't know if that will still hold, but what's your take on this guy Stinson? He is former, so he's been out since 21, but he's still making threats.
Well, it isn't just the threats he made, and like you just said, they're qualified threats. It's who he claims to run with. He claims to be an important cog in the command and control wheel of Antifa.
Oh.
And I don't have the time to go and visually confirm what I hear on other podcasts. But the podcaster that I was watching tonight, is a nationally recognized podcaster. And he's also a criminal defense attorney by training. He's very thorough. And I couldn't believe all the screenshots of Stinson's, not just his threats, but the wide assortment of social media posts across the gamut when it came to his support of Antifa, his desire to assassinate Donald Trump, the multiple calls for violence against, the air quotes establishment, and on and on and on. And my question really comes down to, why did it take until, what was it, yesterday or today, whatever day it was,
right,
for him to finally be pulled in? I mean, I have a lot more respect for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Maybe I shouldn't give them the same amount of respect I have been giving them up until today, because this guy is out. He's clear and present. You can't tell me, well, he was running, undercover and cloak and dagger. No, he was making public statements. I'm sure people were notifying the FBI and saying, hey, you ought to take a look at this guy. He's threatening to assassinate the president. And
right.
Yet it took until now. This guy has been doing this for years.
Well, with a lot of things like this, they have to figure out whether it's a credible threat, which means would he have the capacity to undertake such a thing. So if he threatens to shoot the president, you have to have guns. And the president...
I disagree. I disagree with you.
Well, no, but that's the law. So
no, the law doesn't stipulate you can only investigate, meaning you pay him a visit, Secret Service.
Well, yeah, they might have done that already. It's hard to...
Well, there was no mention of it.
Yeah, it's hard to determine. The guy's making threats. Maybe they looked into his background now, found out he had training as a sharpshooter, and there you go. And all they have to do is look up. I don't know where the guy lives, but if there's
Rudy,
if there's any record of him buying a rifle,
within weeks, and by weeks I mean less than a month, within weeks of January 6th, you had all the important leadership of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers rounded up and thrown in jail for insurrection, which never happened.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying, hey, Danny, come on now.
No, I agree. I talked about this a little bit today about super patriots being manipulated.
Yes, you did.
Through their patriotism. So you get into the CIA or the FBI or whatever, and you do anything for the country, and then the leadership goes, we got the secret. And and you got to hide the secret if you really love this country, because if the secret gets out, it'll ruin the country. And then they do things.
And you know something?
Yeah.
When you said that this morning, the first thought that went through my mind, it's burned into my memory. When Dan Bongino had that question put to him, he and Kash Patel were sitting next to one another. And that question was put to him with regard to the, air quotes, suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. Pay attention. You can go back and watch it anytime you want. Pay attention to his body language.
Oh, yeah.
Pay attention to his eyes. He's looking down. He knows something. And whether it is what I think it is, which is, meaning Dan Bongino, I know he was suicided.
Or
I know he didn't kill him.
Right.
I know he didn't kill himself, but I don't have the evidence.
Right. Or he's living in Ecuador somewhere, so we don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was probably more than likely everybody thinks it was an intelligence op. So everybody can be everybody can be manipulated. They don't have to have, they don't have to have your wife and kids under the gun for you to do what they say. They could convince you. Don't forget the CIA and intelligence, FBI is domestic intelligence as far as I'm concerned. They know how to psychologically profile you and what will work with you and so forth and so on. So it doesn't doubt me that they're compromised. But the guy is under arrest, so at least that's a good start. I'm waiting for Kathy Griffin, though, to be arrested and put out of her misery. Let's move on.
Actually, I would rather see Kathy Hochul arrested.
Yeah, well, we're getting to that right now. So New York City comptroller and mayoral candidate for the city of New York, Brad Lander, a Democrat, was arrested by immigration officers in an immigration court in Manhattan after he tried to protect a migrant who these officers were attempted to arrest.
Wasn't a migrant. It was an illegal alien.
Illegal alien. I'm sorry. I'm reading text straight from the New York Post.
Well, shame on the Post. I expect that from the line.
Yeah,
not
right,
from the Post.
Right, exactly. So yeah, Hochul tried to come to his rescue. Charges were dropped against Lander, and he was released. But anybody who interferes with federal officers, I think, needs to be arrested. That guy, Raz Baraka, the mayor of Newark, who was running for the governor, also was arrested during a dust-up at an ICE detention facility. He was arrested and then released. And what does he go and do? Now he sues the federal government. These people shouldn't be released. I don't care if Kathy Hochul sticks her ugly face in there. They should have prosecuted the guy. Anyway, what's your take? This is another Padilla scenario. They just want to get their faces on TV, and they look like they're fighting Trump.
Look.
Oh, did you? Oh, before you voice in, did you see Padilla on the Senate floor? He was crying.
Yeah.
They led me down a hallway, and he started crying.
And I was screaming at my my phone at the time, because of course I was watching it on my phone, and I said, "You're lucky it wasn't me, because you would have been face down." So, and anyway, I'm seeing a pattern here, and I'll tell you why I think the pattern exists. It exists because what I said to you in a text message last night. They don't have a leader, they don't have a message, and they no longer control the narrative. And when you don't have those three things, and you're running for office or running for re-election, and you're on the perceived losing side of the argument, nobody wants to give you money. This is all about the Benjamins. The more they get their puss on TV, the more they can go and beg people on their mailing lists for $1, $5, $10, $20, $50. That's what they're looking for, because their big donors are sitting on the sidelines and they're saying, "I'm not going to feed a losing cause." So they're trying to get money wherever they can. And I think they're having some positive effect in their coffers by doing this. It is definitely something that is being coordinated. And I think Pam Bondi has made a huge error in judgment by not prosecuting these people. And there's, charges could be reinstated. And my hope is that someone talks to her and says, "You know what? We need to send a message to all of these Marxists. We're in charge, and we're not going to let you get away with this." And it starts with putting them back in jail. Make them bond out. Right. Even if they can get a jury of 12 people to agree to set them free. Make them go through it like they do every Republican, every conservative.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I think they're doing a good job. I think they should do more of it, though. They got LaMonica MacGyver, the representative from New
Yep.
Jersey. They arrested her and pressed charges on her. So I do think they're making a lot of.
Hey, I heard the Green Bay Packers offering her a linebacker position if she beats the charges.
Yeah, I appreciate them being arrested. I think they should be prosecuted, especially when assault is involved. I think it's all good headway. You never would have seen this before under any other president. You never would have seen any of this, these machinations by the Democrats. But certainly you wouldn't see prosecution of politicians in this manner. So I think any good step in this direction is a good step. So
I agree.
I'm for it. I don't think they should have released Lander, and I don't think they should have released Ross Baraka, the mayor of Newark, because then he turned right around and he sued the federal government. So maybe if you made him bond out, he wouldn't have had the money to hire civil attorneys. All right, so the last story today is great news on the signature policy of Donald Trump. Border agents didn't release a single illegal immigrant into the U.S. in the month of May. That's last month. Down 62,000 from May of Biden's May last year under Biden. Just a quick comment on how you think we're doing on the border front. It looks good to me.
Well, really, the only thing I need to say is what Trump himself has already said. This policy of mine proves that our country didn't need new legislation. All we needed was a new leader.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. And, this is the reason why what's going on in LA and now in Chicago and New York is happening. And sooner or later, the anarchists are going to understand that there are not enough of them. And they're puppeteers that control them. These rent-a-mobs, these people, depending on how violent they get and how much trouble they get in. Oh, by the way, all their legal fees are paid for too.
Oh yeah.
All of these rent-a-mobs are getting anywhere from $400 to $1,000 a day. A day.
Yep.
So you want to know why you see all these people? Because they don't have a job. This is their job.
Yeah.
I go wherever the money is.
Yep. I saw it firsthand when I was covering Black Lives Matter. You had the two well-dressed folks drive up in their BMW. They get out, they talk on the megaphone for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they drive away and let all the simpletons go and lay in the street.
And speaking of which, I don't know. You may have mentioned this morning. I'm not positive. That fat slob in the back of the pickup truck. They got him.
Yeah.
They got him. He's in custody tonight. So chalk up another win for the DOJ and the FBI.
Why don't you describe who that was for the audience?
This guy was obviously one of the organizers. Every civil disobedience event has to have people with the money who stay behind the curtain, who then direct the supervisors to organize and coordinate such action. And then they have their foot soldiers, their lieutenants, like this fat slob that was weighing down the back of the pickup truck, handing out police quality riot
masks,
shields.
Yeah.
And those things are not cheap. Anything that's police or military quality costs a lot of money.
Right.
And that fat slob wasn't the guy who paid for it with his own funds. That money was given to him for that purpose, and his job was to hand out as many masks as people needed. Yeah,
and they arrested the driver as well of that truck.
Well, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's good, and they should. They
Right.
got to follow the money, and they got to put a stop to this because it is.
You hear that, Walton family?
Yeah, it isn't hard to track down where pallets of cinder blocks and bricks come from. That should be easy to do using surveillance and cameras. Any other parting shots concerning No Kings or military parade or anything else
Well,
having to do with the disturbances in Washington, Oregon, and there was a murder in Las Vegas by an anarchist Antifa person shot another person.
there was, and I don't have enough other than what was discussed this morning. I will say this: as far as the No Kings go, it was really a big flop. You did a great job of covering it yesterday and a little bit today about what I already knew, which was there were many protests around the country that were scheduled and had to be canceled for lack of interest. I mean, and then on top of that, there were so many around the country where a dozen people, most of which were gray hairs from the 60s, and you know, they held up their signs for an hour and then they went to the nearest Starbucks and had their lattes.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a big flop, and I'm happy about that. As far as there was one other thing that you pointed to that I did want to respond to.
Military parade.
The military parade. Thank you.
Army anniversary. Yeah.
I did not see very much of it, but what little I saw reminded me of those days when my father would put me. I mean, I wasn't even 8 years old yet. He'd put me on his shoulders, and this is for you to recall, Rudy. You know where East Avenue goes over I-95.
Yep.
And that was where the annual Veterans Day and Memorial Day parades were held. And they would start all the way down by the General Putnam Inn, which was about a mile from the bridge, and then it would end somewhere down past the railway station. And the sense of patriotism that I got from that as a little boy, and you know, my father was a World War II vet, disabled. Fortunately, not terribly disabled, but it prevented him from getting a college education. And it instilled pride in one's country, and yes, pride in this country. And that's the purpose of a military parade. That's number one. Number two, it was the 250th birthday for the Army that gave us our freedom. And, you know, everything Trump does is done first class, and the media didn't take any of their valuable time to point out there were representations of military in every uniform starting with 1775 and moving forward. Every single battle that we fought as a nation for our entire history was represented. They had Sherman tanks there. And yes, everybody wanted to point to the fact that we had 60-ton Abrams M1A1 tanks there. Yeah, well, we paid for them.
Yeah.
Nice to see where our money's going. Okay? And so what it did, what it was supposed to do was inspire young people to love this country and respect those who risk life and limb to protect us and our Constitution. And so I think it was a huge success because people did come from all over to see it. And there were a lot of little kids and there were a lot of teenagers. And as we already know, the United States military, specifically the Army and I believe the Marines, already reached their quota for the year.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many more recruits will come from what was inspiring over Flag Day. And that's the other thing.
It was Flag Day. Yeah, and Trump's birthday. I thought it was pretty good. I liked the historic aspect of it. It seemed a lot like a Main Street 4th of July parade more than some show of military might. And what I liked best about it, it looked a lot more fun than the No Kings event. And the people that were interviewed were certainly a lot more cogent.
And what else didn't happen in Washington, D.C. on Flag Day? Oh, that's right. They didn't have any No Kings events in Washington, D.C. that day. I can't imagine why that was.
Because they wouldn't get away with it. All right, we're gonna close it out there. Perry, thanks for joining me today. Episode 117 of Tuesdays with Perry. Thanks again, my friend. We'll talk next week.
Sounds like a plan. I look forward to it, Rudy.
All right, we'll see you next week.
All right, buddy. Take care now.
Yeah, peace out.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, there goes Perry. And that's episode 117 of Tuesdays with Perry. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, I think. Thanks for joining us tonight. We talked a lot about what was happening in the Middle East, what's going on with Israel, and what Perry, who is a self-described Zionist and lover of Israel, thinks we're going a little bit too far and that we should pull back from the brink of World War III. Then we discussed a bunch of other things regarding illegal immigration and threats against Trump. What's new? All right, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week, or join me tomorrow or every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. on Rumble, live for Rudy's Revelation. Peace out.